Hello, hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are reaching and watching us from. Welcome to another episode of H.E.A.L, Having Emotional Anguish Lifted, brought to you by Chrisandoh Ministries. My name is Ogechi, whatever, and I will be your host. Not because this is my show, but because somebody has to control the conversation, right? So, with me, I have. I think we'll start from you. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi guys, my name is Sean. I'm 20 years old and I'm a student.
And next, Sean.
Hi, my name is Sandy, and I am a working adult.
That's a nice one. Do you want to introduce it?
Hi, my name is Chris. That's my name, yeah. I was going to say I'm not an alcoholic, but...
This is my boss. This is Reverend Chris of Chrisandoh Ministries. He is Chris Andoh. And you are?
My name is Nicole. I've just finished university, navigating life.
And?
My name is Ian, and like my friend Sandy, I'm a working adult.
We're all adults, which is important because of the kind of conversation we're going to have today. I want to caution you that we're dealing with some sensitive topics today, just in case we have some children who are watching at this point in time, just to note that it could get, I don't know, we're not sure where it'll go, but just to be aware that we're dealing with sensitive topics. What are those topics? We're going to be having conversations about anxiety, depression, and suicide. Like I said, heavy topics. But the reason we're back here having this conversation is because there seems to be sort of a trend happening. And we want to address it, not because we're specialists, not because we're professionals in any of those fields, but because we care. And we want to talk about it as regards young adults. You would have heard some people say they're young adults on this panel. And the rest of us are sort of just chiming in, learning from each other, but most importantly, hopefully strengthening each other after we leave here. So we're going to start with anxiety. And I will take it. Who's dealing with it?
Oh, anxiety, that's me.
That's you?
Yeah.
Ian's going to talk about it. He's going to draw us in. Go ahead.
All right, thank you. So when we look at the topic of anxiety, I think it's worth noting that it's quite a multifaceted issue that's worth exploring, because research has shown that in about 50% of emerging cases of mental health problems, these things tend to come out between I think they tend to emerge from the age 18 and onwards. And a lot of the problems associated with these challenges they tend to affect people within the ages of 10 and 24. So I think this is one of the avenues in which we can try and explore and unravel some of the things that perhaps the young adults may be facing that we may not necessarily appreciate or understand, but will also help us identify and support them as they're going through these challenges. So I just want to draw from the first question I have on here, which is that how do young adults, and I think I can pose this firstly to Sean and Nicole, and then we can have Reverend jump in. But how do young adults typically describe the feelings of being anxious? Are there any common metaphors or descriptions that they tend to use when describing these feelings?
I would say for me, anxiety is like fear of uncertainty, I'd say.
Yeah.
So in my case, anyways, I think that I have a fear of essentially, how do I say this? Essentially, like, people perceiving me in a negative way, essentially. So, for me, like, I'm Nigerian, but I grew up in, like, a different background. And then when I returned to Nigeria when I was around, like, 7 or 8, I had, like, issues with, like, fitting in, essentially. Mm-hmm. And, like, because of that, and I guess I developed, like, anxiety when it comes to, like, socializing, like, how people will perceive me because I act, like, in a certain way that's a bit different from them, essentially.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, I agree with what he said. And I also think that in terms of anxiety, asking in sense of like metaphorically, I think a common word that's used is crippling. In the sense where in a lot of young people's more so premeditated thoughts that you can't do this or you can't do that. And I think the devil has done a great work in posing that in people's minds because it prevents them from finishing what God has called them to do, essentially. And just personally, just facing anxiety in terms of education mainly. Like, my parents are African, so it's like, I'm expected to get a first class. Is that or nothing? And my mind is like, if I don't get a first class,
pressure.
like, what's going to happen to my life? So I start to overthink a lot of things. Like, even if I do my best at uni, it's like, would I really get a first class? And I become anxious. Then it's keeping me up at night. Like, how can I get a first class after I've submitted? You start to think of different, your mind starts to get creative. And it can be in a very detrimental way as well. So that's something I really sympathize with, like he spoke about.
Reverend, if you want to.
Well, I think I'm the old school person in this place. What from what everyone has said, I think that growing up, we didn't have social media and everything, so all we had was each other. So we did more talking. We talked more amongst ourselves, siblings, friends, family. But what I've realized in this generation, because of social media, young people tend to be isolated. Even though they socialize individually in their rooms by themselves. So they create a little world that they live in, a little bubble that they have a window to the world, but that's it. So the window is out into the world. They hear everybody talking, and it compounds what they're feeling, because you're dealing with anxiety or you're being anxious, and then you go on social media, and then everybody's talking about anxiety, and it's building up what's the little bit is growing because you are listening to everybody else, and it's instead of you letting off what you are feeling, you are more imbibing what everybody else is saying about what you're feeling. And that builds up. And that is what leads to depression, suicide, and everything, because young people don't talk. I get young people coming to my office, and I've one of the things that I've seen over the years, I do more of the talking than young people. And it's supposed to be the other way around. You get them into the office, let's talk.
It's hard to draw.
That's my job, trying to draw something out. And I think that over the years I've gained the experience of drawing conversation from even a stone. So
that's why we have you here. That's why he's here. Because
I think I should be able to draw everything out of you. And some people sit there and it's like and it's like pulling water out of a stone. Nothing is coming out. And not because they don't want to talk, but the society they've grown in, you do less talking, a lot of listening, and no talking. So everything is rather being sucked in instead of being brought out. And when you don't bring out, then anxiety builds.
For sure.
I think one thing is essentially clear from all of this. You can tell that anxiety is a rather deep and personal experience, and in as much as it's unique, we experience it uniquely in that the way in which I perceive it would vary greatly from the way in which Sean may perceive it. And also the experience of it. There are certain things that I wouldn't necessarily be anxious about, or certain circumstances within which I wouldn't experience anxiety.
That's true.
But he
That's
would.
true.
So again, driving back towards the point, you think about the ways in which people try to describe the anxiety. Again, I think I mentioned this earlier. They employ metaphors in kind of describing the kind of feelings and emotions they are experiencing. So, Reverend, you were saying that in your conversations with these young adults, you find yourself doing most of the talking. You found, I'd say, ingenious ways of getting them to share, getting them to basically review more of what those metaphors are. Right? I'd like for you to share some of those techniques with us because I think that would enable us to better support our friends and other young adults who find themselves in those situations.
So I basically start from a place of strength.
Yeah.
So like, what are your likes? What, you know, like, who are your friends? What do you like doing? And all that. So if you can get somebody, say for instance, somebody who likes maybe writing. What do you write? Let's talk about it. And as we talk about your interests, I'm just trying to pull out, you know, from that place, you know, because when I go to a place where you are comfortable,
Yeah.
I expect you to be more vocal. And the more vocal you become, the more your guts calm
And then
down.
you're able to kind
Because
of,
a lot of times, young people, like what Sean was saying, young people are on guard.
yeah.
They don't want people to see their weakness. And especially when they come to a setting like a church and a pastor. No, the pastor is the wrongest person, you know, that for them to know where I'm weak and what I'm struggling with. And so they put up a lot of guards. And I know that. So mine is like, get the person as comfortable as they can. So let's talk about what you like doing. And I ask questions on that thing just to get you to trust me more, get your guards down a little bit more. I'm not your dad.
Yeah.
I'm not your mom. You know, you can, you know, put a mask on when you're dealing with somebody else. I'm not going to judge you. So just drop the guard. Let's talk.
Yeah.
You know, so when you can get a person to get that confidence about you and comfortable that whatever they say stays here, then they draw their guards a little bit and they can share, because anxiety is essentially fear that is masked. So you cannot trust somebody to share what you're afraid of. If you don't trust the person, you will not say it. Yeah, so like they laugh at me. I don't mind. You can have a snake, you can have a lion, I deal with it, but bring a horse, we are talking about something different.
I mean, it's like you said, it's personal. Everybody has the thing that triggers
You know,
them.
So it's like, it doesn't make sense, I know. But why a horse? I don't know. I deal with anything, but when you bring a horse, that's a different kettle of fish. You know, so, but going back to the Bible says that be anxious for nothing.
Amen.
But with everything by prayer and thanksgiving, let your requests be made known unto God. So anxiety is Satan's way of getting a foothold into your life.
Yeah.
And that is what I want young people to understand. That if Satan wants to have a landing pad in your life, he starts with anxiety. And then anxiety builds into fear. Fear builds into lack of faith. And when lack of faith means you don't have any victory, and then you become a slave to him.
Spiraling.
Do you understand? Because it just goes, becomes a whirlwind, and social media doesn't help. Because a lot of times you are being bombarded with a lot of information, and then information overload brings more anxiety, more fear, and then just cripples you. And at that point, you become a prisoner of your own thoughts, a prisoner of your own, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that the conversation on anxiety can go on. It can, I feel like, but it doesn't end. But hopefully, something that was said just now turned the light on, changed your mindset.
I would say that talk.
Okay.
Anxiety is like a fizz, a fizz in a bottle. The gentler you open and let the cap loose, the more you stabilize the liquid in there. You know, so if you can begin to talk to people, it helps. Because like what you're saying, I feel like a misfit because I was raised in a different place and now people tease, you know, and all that. So I don't want to put my wrong foot forward. So I'd rather not talk, and then you feel anxious and then it builds, you know. But when you talk, you realize that everybody's the same. Everybody's afraid of something.
Yeah.
It's just that we haven't said what we are afraid of. And so you are building the fear and think that you are the only misfit here. But you're not the only misfit. We are all misfits, you know. So why are you, like punishing yourself? The more you talk, the better you feel.
Yeah.
And then the more confident you become in yourself, then you can deal with some of these things.
Speaking of the more you talk, the better you feel, we're also going to address depression, as I said. And I think, Sandy, you're going to take us through that, aren't you?
So, I mean, depression is more than simply feeling unhappy or sad for a few days. It's being said that people go through periods of feeling down, but when you're actually depressed, you feel persistently sad for weeks and months. So, with the worldly point of view, standpoint, depression is like a really serious mental illness. So, as faith people, what I want to sort of ask is that how does faith influence our understanding of depression?
So you're asking
Yeah.
them.
I'm asking Sean.
Sean gets the first question.
Sean, that's what you get that's what you get for that's what you get.
I feel like depression is often like this sense of discontent or like despair about life. Like I feel like people who have a stronger faith in God tend to be less depressed because they have something to like hold on to, if that makes any sense. Like I feel like if you have like faith in God, then how do I say this? If you have faith in God, like
There's hope.
yes, it's like basically like you're more hopeful about like what life could bring to you.
I mean, I agree with what Sean is saying. But I also think that in addition, like, I'm a Christian. I've been depressed while
I was going to say, like,
a
this,
Christian.
yeah.
And I think it was because for a long time, I think I was okay being depressed because that's what I knew. Like, that's what I've known my life for a long time. And I think a lot of people are just obsessed with the idolatry of their emotions. So they are okay staying in that state of depression.
Woo.
So they don't want to, like, it's like even when you hear that, okay, God is love and then God is so madly in love with you, it's like the idea of someone else loving you when all you've known is to be sad, you'd rather be sad because that's your comfort space. Wow. But then when, I think I had an encounter one time where it was like I truly understood what it meant for God to love me. And I think depression more time is a lack of a sense of love and people start to crave those things in different spaces of their lives, but it never fills them up. So having faith, for me, it was just knowing that regardless of what life is, there is still hope. What I've gone through is no worse than what Jesus Christ went through on the cross, really. So that's how I feel about that.
So, Reverend, how do we hold on to this faith when it comes to our mental state?
Depression is real. Depression is real. And,
Yes, it is.
It's an illness like having headache or anything else. One of the things that, especially we from the African culture, we feel that, what do you mean by you're depressed? Get it, snap out of it. But that is not the way to go about it. Some people, especially certain temperaments like melancholics, that are depressive because they tend to overthink things. And the more you overthink, you begin to feel sorry for yourself. And the more you feel sorry for yourself, the more you judge yourself. The more you judge yourself, the more you feel like the world doesn't, the world is just ignoring you and just going by, and they are leaving you behind. And you begin to feel like you don't want to be part of what's going on. Depressive people stay in their rooms, pull the curtains, they eat themselves to sleep, they cry, and they begin to enjoy the company of themselves. The worst person to be married to is a depressive person.
Wow.
Yeah, because
Real.
they sometimes...
Why you say real? Are you married? Why you say real? This is serious. Real. Sorry.
Sometimes, even when there's no problem, they'll create a problem so that they can exclude you.
Yeah.
So they can go into that comfort zone of being by themselves, feeling sorry for themselves. You know, sometimes depressive people will want to remember a sad thing to make them want to feel sorry.
It's almost like it's like an addiction.
It's an addiction. It's a mental illness.
Yeah.
It's an addiction that makes them feel. So if you're married to a depressive person, it's a difficult thing. Because I've had the experience of dealing with such case, and it's like there's no issue, but they will create an issue so that it excludes you from me, so that I can go into my comfort zone. My comfort zone is feeling sorry, crying, pulling the curtains and everything, and that is it. How do you deal with somebody who just wants to be depressed? Sometimes there's no reason to feel the way you are feeling. That's what makes it an illness. Because it's not because A, B, and C has happened. It could be, there's nothing really, but they'll go back. When I was a child, I was abused, when my mother left me alone, and then they go on and rehearse sad stories, and then that gives them a license to close up and then feel depressed. And especially in the church, we don't talk about it.
We don't talk about it.
We don't talk about it often. So it makes us feel that we judge ourselves the more. That I'm the only one going through. I'm the only one that feels this way. No, it's not true. Like I would like to say, there are certain times I don't feel like being in church and I'm the pastor. I don't feel like going and talking to people. Because I want to be by myself. But I cannot be by myself. We are not created to be by ourselves. We are social beings. We are supposed to socialize. Part of our healing is to be with others and interact with others. The worst prison you can put, the most hateful prisoner you can ever think of is isolation. But depressed people love isolation. So it's like you want to put yourself in the worst prison. When when you ask a depressed person really what they are depressed about, it's nothing more than what the next person is going through. Most of the time, but they feel that their case is the worst and it cannot be helped.
But for young adults, though, I feel like the society you were saying about social media and like how. The trend of depression, like you just walk around and you just see the young people and they just look so unplugged, disconnected, and it's just
And that's what I was saying.
Heaviness is just
that's exactly what I was saying. That when you're depressed, you like to associate yourself with people, and social media gives you a window into different. So it compounds the problem instead of helping the problem. People tend to soak in more, to feel more. Like, oh, I was raped. And then they go into online and then somebody's talking about, I was raped by my father, I was raped by my mother. And then they gather all these...
You're trauma bonding.
They gather all these things and it compounds their own. You get it. And then... And like I said, the temperament also matters. Because if you are a melancholic, you sort of build more of the issue. A melancholic would take an ordinary case and they will like incubate it and then nurture it and bring a baby out of it. And the issue would have been like a little seed, but they will make a baby out of it because that's the temperament they have. So I feel that the starting point is talking. If we can talk, we can get through anxiety, we can get through depression, and we can get through suicide.
Okay. Whew.
But the problem is the talk.
Okay.
So I hope this will not just be an avenue of us talking, but we can help people. So if you have any issues, just there's a number. Just reach out. You have to tell us your name. Give give us whatever.
Yeah.
Text or message, and then we'll deal with it. We'll talk.
Talk we will. Oh gosh. I feel like truly we're just like is getting a little bit more intense in the studio here. I don't know about you guys who are watching. We're laughing, but really there's some heavy stuff being dealt with. We're gonna move on to suicide. And I don't say this lightly. I don't bring this up lightly. I don't bring it up as a popular conversation, but it is a needful conversation because we're hearing about it quite often. I mean, statistics show there's a website, an organization really, Papyrus. It's an organization here in England, UK, and they deal with these statistics. I see that suicide is the main cause of death in young people under the age of 35 in UK. That's the main cause of death. In 2023, 1,840 young people under the age of 35 took their own lives. Under the age of 35. And around 75% of those were boys or young men. Again, the trend is why we're having the conversation with this age group, with the young adults, with the young professionals. And an average of 5 young people take their lives each day. I don't know about you guys, but these kind of stats are disturbing for me because I'm thinking to myself, what is it that is driving this? What is driving this trend? Social media. We're talking about social media. We're talking about reduced contact.
Yeah.
Physical contact, social contact. People are not talking to each other the way we are. We're typing, we're doing LOL, we're sending emojis, and then we have the anxiety of talking to people. All of a sudden you're like, ooh, I don't know how to talk to somebody. And then you have depression because I want to talk to somebody, but I can't because I'm anxious. And then now I'm so sad because I can't. So now I'm depressed. And then the next issue that arises is, okay.
I feel suicide comes into the fore when people feel like the world is better off without them. And why people think that way is because they feel that their contribution to the system, the world, is negligible.
Wow.
And I think that a church like this, like ours, is a good avenue because it gives everybody the opportunity, to bring whatever they have to the table.
Yeah.
And that helps I'm talking about young people feeling suicidal thoughts, So I'll encourage parents, let your children, allow them into places like here where they can, feel that whatever they are bringing is adding to what is being done.
Yeah.
It helps.
Yeah.
When the young person feels that the world will move on perfectly when I'm away, then they feel like, okay, let me end it all.
Yeah.
Sometimes the whole world will judge somebody who's committed suicide as selfish. But what I want us to focus on is what has led to that point. Why do you feel that we don't want you here?
And I think that's the question. So I want to ask, do you know people? And I started with that because I don't want to ask you if you've been there, but certainly share if you have. What is it? How have you made it this far?
So,
and not wanted to be like, you know what, I'm done. I'm checking out. What has kept you going And if you've dealt with those feelings of, or having suicidal thoughts, what made you say, actually, no, let me give this life thing another chance?
So, I haven't actually had suicidal
Okay,
thoughts.
thank
but
God. Okay.
I have been a caretaker for two people who have attempted suicide before. I think a lot of the times, one of the biggest factors is social isolation.
Absolutely.
I feel like for a lot of people who are suicidal, a lot of them tend to be very recluse, and they don't really have a lot of social contact. Maybe beyond family or really really close friends, and because of that, they're kind of allowed to wander in their thoughts. And I think that social media has also amplified it a bit
Absolutely.
more. Because
Absolutely.
now it's easier to get access to communities that tend to amplify
To
those
feed
feelings.
those,
Yeah.
I feel like that is,
Enable it.
oh, social media, oh, social media.
Yeah.
Goodness.
Yeah. And I think that has definitely made it a lot worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing I'll say is that if you have a friend who is nurturing those type of stuff, just stay with them. Like you're saying, you're being a caretaker for somebody who's had suicidal thoughts. What they need is a friend. They need somebody who they can download their feelings to. Because the more you talk, the better you feel.
Okay.
Do you get it? Anybody who's talking about, I want to commit suicide, is not going to commit suicide.
Interesting.
The one who wants to commit suicide doesn't talk about it.
Oh, dear.
Do you understand what I mean? The one that is threatening that I'm going to kill myself, I'm going to kill myself. No, they are not going to kill themselves. They're just looking for attention. So if you can get them talking, or you can stay close to them. Especially somebody's thinking,
Just having a
don't
heavy-
leave.
Okay.
Don't leave. Just stay with them.
Okay.
Stay with them. Assure them.
Okay.
Keep them talking. If you can get them talking and stay them and assure them that life is gonna get better. And then really life gets better. I don't care how dark the cloud is today. It's a feeling. It will pass. Whatever the situation is today that looks so bleak, it's only a matter of time. That situation will pass.
Okay.
Sometimes we feel that this situation will never ever get any better, but it would. Trust me. Just bear, and then it gets better with life. I mean, I've had friends, way back that have had issues, and I can tell you that if I were to point that this guy wanted to end it all, and you see them today, you won't believe the same
Grace
person.
of God.
So it's time. Give it time. Give life a chance. You'll be amazed.
Okay. Nicole, I don't know. Do you have anything experienced or observed that you want to share?
I mean, both, essentially.
Wow.
So I think there was a time where, I had just, it was a period where, I was saved, but then I was still trying to understand, what's the thing about God? And then it just felt like that period of transition, nobody really gets it, and then you're alone. And just post-COVID, just everyone being used to the whole stay on your own isolation, I think it just became a trend. Mm-hmm. And even online now, people are posting every day, oh, R.I.P., she took her life, and there's, awareness for suicide, people that kill themselves. So it's become a trend where people think it's okay to take a life that I did not create, that I did not make myself. And I think at that point in time when I was confused, I was like, if I just do this, who's going to really be bothered? No one's going to really look for me. Everyone just pretends to care, and then eventually they don't. But I had a friend then, and she would always come to my house, every day after uni. She would come to my house. And one day she was just speaking to me, I was opening up to her. We had, a sit down in my room. And she was like, oh, tell me. And I hadn't really, because, I'm always bubbly. People wouldn't think that this babe wants to...
That's the thing, isn't it?
Take it all. They wouldn't think that far.
Yeah.
And it just takes someone who is emotionally sensitive to know that there's something more to this person. This person feels way more than what they look like. So she was speaking to me, and then I told her. And then she was asking me why. At first, it was more so like, what do I like to do? I create content. Like, I'm always smiling on my page. And then it kept on getting deeper. And I was like, why is she getting into my private business? But then eventually I told her. And I figured that in telling her, it was like, it didn't really have a hold on me anymore. It was like, I was okay keeping it to myself because I felt like it would thrive in secrecy. It's just me that knew.
Yeah.
And even if I tell anyone, no one really cares. But then also how she went about it, she didn't just pry into my life. It was very slow and steady at my pace, and she was caring and patient as well. And I also think when people don't understand that you didn't make the life you're about to take, and you don't also understand the consequence of what happens after. Because it's okay to also say that, like, depression is real, anxiety is real, like, these things happen. But it's like, think of the eternal life cause of what you're doing. If you take your life now, where are you going to go? What's going to happen to you? You have a family you're leaving behind. I even saw online that I think a pastor had taken his life just because of ministry and all the stress about that. So it's not just people that are secular. Christians are going through these things actively.
For real.
But just not spoken about enough. And I
real.
think when they find a safe space where the light is being shed into their life, where they see that God in you really is your hope of glory. So that's my take anyways.
Yeah. Ian, do you want to add anything or?
I'd say the one thing that's really underscored everything that we've covered so far is speaking.
Yeah.
Speaking.
Yeah.
It's really important that we share our thoughts, particularly with people that we are close to, our confidants, our close ones, because you gain nothing in bottling it up. Because again, as with many things in life, the deepest, darkest, most negative feelings and emotions, they also gain momentum, right? And the only way in which you can curb that momentum is by speaking, because then you relieve yourself of that pressure. So personally, I haven't had such an adverse experience in that regard. But I've always found myself in a position when I had to support people who were struggling, to share their emotions, or were feeling depressive, or were struggling mentally in some regard. And one thing that always helped in, subsiding those emotions was getting them to speak, spending time with them, and most importantly, being patient. You can't rush it. You can't always try and force them to, sweep it under the rug. Or treat it trivially, right? Because one, you need to acknowledge that it is a real thing, and two, you need to address it with care. You need to show that empathy, and you also need to be very adaptable in sensing and being aware of the changes in their moods, amongst other things, right? Being attentive goes a long way in helping you support people going through these challenges. And I think it's really important that we, as individuals, particularly as Christians, I think it's really important, given the nature of the charge we bear, to show love unto one another, and above all, unto our brethren, the next man. We need to understand that the church has a space to give life and also produce light within the world, right? And if we take it upon ourselves to equip ourselves with, again, all the skills, the instruments, the knowledge, the know-how, the awareness, for these situations, again, it goes a long way in, essentially magnifying the glory of God on this earth.
Yeah. Before, I don't know, Sandy, do you want to?
I think it's also quite important that we check on our friends who seems to be happy all the time, bubbly all the time, because most of the times they're the one that really are going through, because they're hiding it with the smiles and the joy, but it's not real joy within them. So as young adults and as people, we should also be more mindful and checking on people that are close to us, because it's quite sad, because recently a girl that we used to go to church with disappeared, and they found her in River Thames. So she isolated herself from everybody, and nobody sort of like knew what was going on. And so it's quite important that we check on people, and even when people seem to be happy online or even offline, we should take care in establishing that relationship. Yeah.
I when I was a little bit younger, probably like when I was in the young adult, stop it, Ian. On a more serious note, I struggled with that because I'm very hard on myself. And so if things aren't working out the way that I planned, I get a little bit, it throws me off because I feel like I've done my bit. So why isn't the output according to what it should be? And I remember I was struggling. And again, isolation. I wasn't talking to people I wasn't sharing my feelings. So you guys look surprised because you're like, what, you? Yes. And I remember I would walk on the street and I would think, I could just walk into this traffic. And I would, I'm like, it just walk into the traffic. It's just like, this is enough is enough. And I had to get to a point where if I tell you that the reason I don't do that is because I promised God. I didn't give myself this life. So I said to God, I won't do it. I promise. I won't hurt myself. I won't walk into traffic. But those thoughts, those feelings were very real. When I was younger, they're less real now because, I just feel like, well, okay, you get over yourself. But at the time, it was very scary. And who was I going to tell? Mm-hmm. They were like, you, prayer warrior, you, church worker, you, this person, you, big sister, who do I tell that I want to hurt myself? I don't want to say the K word. But you know what I mean? Suicide. I'm having these thoughts, these very dark thoughts. So yes, it took me saying to God, you know what? I won't do it. Because of you, I will keep going. And that's literally why I'm still sitting here, because there were many traffics. There were many opportunities to walk into traffic. I want us to keep it real. Like I was sitting here thinking, should I say it? Should I not? I'm going to say it. It was a struggle for me. And I was, yeah.
And you see, it's a very good thing you've just done here, because sometimes we pretend.
Yeah.
And we don't like talking. We talk about others, not ourselves. And our experiences we like to bury. You bringing this like secret, if you like, to the fore helps, because it makes anybody else who's going through feel that I'm not alone. Mm-hmm. Because if only I can know that what I'm thinking is not just me, I'm not alone, it helps. And one of the things that we in the church must preach more about is hope.
Okay.
Because suicidal thoughts, depression, anxiety is all the lack of hope. So Christ in us, the hope of glory, he brought hope. So let's look unto him. When we look unto him, we look unto hope. When we look unto hope, we gain strength. So it's all about not just hearing, but believing what we hear and living that hope. And I believe that will be better. But let's talk. Talk to somebody.
Yeah.
I'm here. Talk to me.
Yeah. Let's talk. That's really what we're doing here. We're talking about it. Yeah. I think this is any other thing anybody can we exit, because I think I need to.
It's a bit emotional.
I need to. I'm gonna. Yeah,
it would be a good place to just end.
Yeah, should we? Okay. Let's talk. Let's talk. There will be links and phone numbers on the screen for you to get in touch. We are part of a church, Calvary International Christian Center. We also are part of a ministry, Andoh Ministries, but certainly look us up. Let's talk. Reverend Chris is here. And if you need to talk to any of us before you get to Reverend Chris, no problem. But let's talk. You're not alone. And I'm not just saying that because it's a cliche. You're really not alone. We are here, and we want to be here for you. Until next time, we'll see you. Take it easy. God bless.